Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm audible to you. My name is Priyadarshika Subba, and I am the Research Assistant here at ICM. I would like to welcome our government officials, Secretary CPV and OIA, and Chairman of ICM Sri Sanjay Bhattacharya, Joint Secretary OIA1 and CEO of ICM Sri Yogeshwar Sangwan, our PGE Sri Amrit Lahoon, and our POEs from various states. A warm welcome also to our panelists, Mr. Gabriel Bordado from ILO New Delhi, Ms. Avneet Kaur from NSTC, Mr. Praveen Roy from EHL Advisory Services, Ms. Veena Swaroop from FICCI, and our discussant, Professor Irudhya Rajan from Center for Development Studies, Trivandrum. Thank you for giving us your time, and to all our relevant experts and stakeholders from different organizations and institutions for gathering here today and for joining us in this vital discussion on rethinking skilling amidst COVID-19, the prospects and the challenges. We hope that this discussion comes at an opportune time as the changing nature of the labor markets and the implications of COVID-19 calls for this dialogue and discussion to develop a strategic approach towards skill development and training. Just a few announcements before we begin. We request everyone other than the panelists to kindly mute your microphones and videos during the session so that we can assure a better video and audio quality. The relevant buttons can be found at the bottom of your screens. We have some time allotted for a question and answer round session, so you may indicate your queries and observations on the group chat, and we will try to take them all up during the question and answer round session. So without much further ado, may I now kindly request Sri Sanjay Bhattacharya, sir, to deliver his opening remarks. Thank you, everyone, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Priyadarshika, for organizing this particular webinar. I find these days we are conversing mainly through webinars, which is not a bad way, so that we can make the most of the time that's available when we are confined to our offices. I thought I would mention a few brief points before the discussions begin, and I look forward to these very much. What we have found is that the COVID-19 pandemic and the global economic downturn, which seem to be happening at the same time, pose several new policy challenges, and at the same time, they provide us with new opportunities, particularly in the area of labor and migration that we are looking at. There are two trends I find, technology and innovation, which give us the hope that we shall always seek to be ahead of the curve, and that's a very positive one. But I think in order to have this particular positive and optimistic trend, we also need to have a certain risk and return kind of an approach. And these come through, again, two different sets of behavioral patterns. One is the willingness to skill oneself and to do better or do other things. And the other is to be entrepreneurial. And these are both very essential in this kind of an environment. So if I look at the changing profile of economic activities as we face today, there are some broad trends that I notice. First, there is a slowing demand for old technologies. We find, for instance, even oil and gas in the energy sector is going down. We find that the luxury market is something that is being hit very hard. We find that revival in some of the labor-intensive sectors, some of the other sectors is still to come. For instance, in construction, which we hope will come soon. The hospitality sector is still very badly hit. Entertainment is one which I think is also very severely affected, and that affects many, many people. And at the same time, within all this, we find that there is also a growing demand for certain sectors. One of these is the high-tech, and I find that this is something that is continuing to grow. Of course, health sector is one which is growing at this point of time. Agriculture has maintained a rather stable profile. Public services have gone up in terms of importance and profile. And some of the fourth industrial revolution items are also seeing a dynamic trend. The fourth broad trend in terms of economic activities that I noticed is that there seems to be some sort of geographic redistribution of economic activities in terms of the way in which people are prioritizing their future investment practices. Of course, in this panel, we are primarily looking at and focused on workers and professionals who migrate overseas. And of course, they have certain unique characteristics which make them distinct from the domestic migrant. I think with our youthful demography, we have over 66% under the age of 35. We shall be a major contributor to the global economy. And well into the second half of the 21st century, we shall still be a young nation providing people to countries across the world. And this will not just be in West Asia, but also across North America, Europe, Southeast Asia. And I think what is going to happen over time is that two-way flows will also increase. So it's not just people from India going out, but people coming back. In all this, and that's why we are organizing this particular seminar, is that the skills will be a very important element of our toolkit. And I look forward to hearing from you as to why skill development and training should be a central position in this regard, and how skilled migrants can be the drivers of economic growth in both the receiving as well as the sending country, how skilled people can support their integration in overseas labor markets, and perhaps even enhance their wages and improve working conditions. But I do notice that there are certain issues with our approach to skilling. And some of these that I think of, which we need to work at, and I look to your suggestions, are I think we need a much better database on skilling. And we need to map the skills with the available, the existing, as well as the potential jobs. We also need to factor in the situations for reskilling and upskilling. We need to look at new market opportunities. I can see Professor Rajan over there mentioned the other day in a conference about new immigration corridors. So we need to look at new sectors and new countries or regions where we need to do this. At the G2G level, we also need to have more commitment and negotiations on social security agreements, on migration and mobility agreements, on recognition of prior learning. And of course, there's a lot of work that's going on, but perhaps we need to do this very much more. And finally, I think the other big issue is how we link up. I think this COVID has provided us this opportunity where we are all on the same platform. The different stakeholders, government and the public sector, the private sector, the chambers of commerce, recruiting agents. I'd like to see headhunters get into this process as well, because migration is a very, very large ambit. And the skill providers, the ones who provide the training. And I think we all need to get together and have much more detailed discussions so that we can formulate a policy. We, of course, have the umbrella of the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, which provides us with a framework under which we have very outstanding work done by the National Skill Development Corporation. And I think in many ways, the skill training and the ground level interaction with the industry, the skills councils that have been set up are going to be very key in this process. The Prime Minister had promoted this vision of skill development and a skilled India. And in terms of that, we ourselves in the Ministry of External Affairs have been working with the Ministry of Skills Development as well towards promoting some of this. So the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Yojana is something that we have integrated. The pre-departure orientation training, the PDOT as we call it, is one of the first that we have undertaken to provide some of the soft skills as people go overseas. We are hoping that we will be able to have much more in terms of boosting the skill recognition and also upskilling, because we are currently working with the Emirates and Saudi and with other GCC countries in terms of skill recognition and in terms of matching of skills. I noticed that there have been in the last couple of weeks some very important and significant developments. One was that the National Skills Development Corporation has launched the skilled worker database for employment support, Pradesh, as it's called. This is done in collaboration. As you probably know, that we have the Migrant database, which is used for migration primarily to the GCC countries. But I think we need to expand this to cover the entire globe. And so the Swadesh option is a remarkable step in that process, and we are fully committed in supporting and providing data for this. I noticed that there are some state governments also which have taken up this particular challenge. The Madhya Pradesh government has launched something called the Rozgar Setu, in which they are trying to provide this option of mapping and matching people together. And I understand the Kerala and Bihar governments are also doing this. But I think at the end of the day, and that's what we would like to do through this particular session, is to bring all the stakeholders together. So as I mentioned earlier, the government and private sectors who provide the jobs, the chambers who act as the key intermediaries, the international organizations who provide us the links and the best practices, and finally the skill providers, and how we can all work together so that the migrant who's coming from overseas either has an option of working within the country in an appropriate capacity, or has an option of migrating into some other country or go back to his own country. Because we've recently seen that the United Arab Emirates, for instance, has opened up for 200,000 people to come back. And so we've seen throughout this period health workers going back. So there are certain positive signs even amidst this pandemic. I look forward to the discussions that are going to follow, and I hope that if you tap in on your inputs so that we can have a policy framework which is much more inclusive and looks at optimizing the interests of the Indian citizens. I've always believed that migration should be legal and safe, and I've also believed that when we have movements, migration, the transitions should be as short as possible and should be most economical, so minimize the cost of transitions. Thank you very much to all of you for joining this session, and I look forward to your views so that we can take forward our policy agenda. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, sir, for your initial remarks. We'll now begin the proceedings of the panel discussion. I once again welcome all the panelists who have joined us today. And at the outset, I would just like to say that each panelist will have approximately 10 minutes for speaking. At the end of 8 minutes, I would probably remind you that 2 minutes are left to wrap up. And thereafter, we can have a more detailed discussion in the Q&A session. So with that, I'll invite Gabriel Bordado, who is the Skills and Employment Specialist from ILO. Gabriel, over to you.
Can you hear me? Thank you very much, Dr. Singh, and good afternoon, Secretary Bhattacharya. Good afternoon, Secretary Bhattacharya, and good afternoon also to the co-panelists and the participants in this meeting. My apology for not having a picture because I'm using a phone and I really don't know how to configure this in terms of showing the I would not elaborate. It's good that Secretary stating the trends in national migration. But let me probably set back last year when there was a global commission report on the future of work. Basically, in a nutshell, the report says that there are 425 million jobs that will be created, and another 18 million jobs in the green economy. So, Secretary Bhattacharya is correct. in terms of saying that the sector of care economy and the green transition or green economy is really the sector that moving or maybe having a job creation. Hold on, there's somebody interpret. Sorry. There is somebody calling. Basically, as I have mentioned earlier, that care economy and green are the future in terms of job creation. But let me also try to emphasize that report says that the rural economy should also be a priority because that is where the future of many workers lies and jobs must be created. And with this, they say that the job displacement due to automation is now rapidly moving and really going back, looking at the current or present scenario now, it's really, they say that the recommendation of that report is now happening, particularly in the automation, particularly in creating jobs in the care economy and looking at the green transition or sustainable sectors. Now, one of the recommendations based on this finding is also aligned with what Secretary Bhattacharya has mentioned, that we need to invest in people's capacity to enable them to acquire skills which are new, reskilling and upskilling throughout the life and support them through the various transitions, meaning from school to work to a new work, then from work to another work, and then down to the retirement. So this is what now they call as the skills and lifelong learning policies. It is recommended that this should be developed at the country level with a strong linkage of social protection and broader macroeconomic policies such as fiscal and industrial policy. So this is the report probably looking back. Now, looking now at the current situation, the context now with the COVID pandemic, there's really mass exodus of returning migrant workers. India is not an exception. India is really much worse because they have the international returning migrant workers, and there's a huge number of internal migrants. So, I mean, it's really the issue in terms of how do you address these both sectors, the international and the internal. On top of that, the micro and small and medium enterprises are heavily affected, particularly in the distribution, the retail, the food, the garments, the manufacturing, and the service. These are really heavily affected by the pandemic. Now, looking at the recommendation of the future of work, that there's a need to skill, reskilling, and upskilling, it would not be an issue if there is no pandemic. But now we're looking at how do we address the issue of this recommendation, which is currently happening now, and looking at the example of the international returning migrants. So as a response, ILO has recommended a Tibet response, which was taken from the global rapid assessment done by ILO, the World Bank, and the UNESCO, which ended last June 15, and they're in the process of finalizing the report. But the key highlights of that is that there is a need to come up with an alternative learning system vis-a-vis or compared to the traditional face-to-face. So what we are recommending is the three options of online learning. This is not a new thing, but just have to magnify. The second one is the distance learning. Yeah, this is much older than the online. The third recommendation of that rapid assessment really looks at a blending learning process. Maybe you combine face-to-face with the online training, or face-to-face with the distance learning. So these are the three options that has been recommended that government, particularly India, should do. Now, what are the gaps in terms of the country's scenario? Basically, there are 4 areas for intervention. One is the infrastructure that need to be a bottleneck for e-learning or online, right? Infrastructure, even India, which is the hub of information technology. If you look at the other countries, states, there's still some area where there are no internet, when there are no telephone, mobile phone providers. So this is one issue in terms of looking at addressing the skills, training, retraining, and upgrading. The second recommendation of that study was to come up or to make that instructors, the teachers, empowered in terms of implementing these 3 recommendations. So they need to capacitate the trainers and instructors. The third component is that students should have prepared to become an independent learner. You have to move from the scenario that teacher will give everything to the student or the learner, and the learner will do. It's the other way around. The trainer will now be a facilitator, and the student should manage their learning ways. And the fourth one is that there's a need in more and adapted online resources, meaning how do you populate the online facility, how do you populate the distance learning platform. So basically, these are the 4 recommendations that we need to really look at if we are trying to address the issue of lifelong learning, the recognition of prior learning. Now, going back to the international returning migrant workers, the Secretary mentioned about the database of returning migrant workers. It's really a good model for India to really replicate it, to expand it other than the GCC countries. Because this would be the basis now of profiling the migrant workers. From this database, we come up with a strategic assistance program for migrant workers. The first line, since the scenario is that these returning migrant workers returning in India still don't have the options to work, and while waiting for work, we would really look at getting the profile of these returning migrant workers and give formal qualifications to the experience and competency gained while working abroad. And how do we do that?
Gabriel, you have 2 minutes left.
Yeah, I can, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
And with this work experience, we were trying to look at the e-assessment system, meaning we are piloting it in Bangladesh and in Cambodia, and really looking at getting the formal qualifications of the returning migrant workers. Now, those who need training will go to the alternative delivery system, meaning through online, as I mentioned earlier, online, distance learning or blended learning. And then from there, you issue the formal qualification under the NSQF here, and look at then proceed to a facility called job matching facility, and we're looking at a system like a mobile app base that really looks at matching the requirement of the workers certified or of formal qualification and the job that are available domestically or internationally. So that would really look at this one. In summary, there are 4 components. One is the profiling of migrant workers, which India has now, the e-migrate. Now we're proposing to come up with an e-assessment system. As part of that is the alternative delivery system, really looking at online blended training or face-to-face. And at the same, and last component will be looking at an app-based job matching facility. Thank you. Over, Dr. Singh.
Thank you, Gabriel, for finishing well in time. We really took note of all the 4 suggestions that you made. I'll now invite Ms. Avneet Kaur, who heads the International Collaboration and Corporate Strategy Division in NSDC. Avneet, you have 10 minutes. Go ahead. Avneet, are you there? It seems we've lost Avneet, but in the meanwhile, we'll go to the next speaker, and when Avneet joins back, we'll invite her. So I'll now request Mr. Roy, who is the Associate Director of ECOL Advisory Services. Mr. Roy? Mr. Roy? You can start. We can't hear you. Still not clear. Not audible. The audio is not coming through, Mr. Roy. Perhaps you can try joining in through phone.
Is it unmute now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks
Yes,
so much.
please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so technology always poses its own challenges, and we all are learning to cope with it over the last couple of months now. But thank you very much. I said good afternoon, Mr. Bhattacharya, and Surabhi, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to speak on migratory nature of our workforce in hospitality industry. EHL, incidentally, just to give you a brief introduction, we are world's oldest hotel management college, and we are 126 years old, based out of Lausanne in Switzerland. We have recently launched a vocational program, which is global program, which we have centers in Saudi Arabia, Dubai, and actively with CII we are opening up in India. Bhutan, incidentally, was our first center in this zone. And the reason behind is there are lots of good quality graduate programs in the world, but coincidentally there is none which actually trains people to work in international environment at the entry-level workforce. And that has been a challenge. And traditionally, hospitality industry, if you see, has been dependent on migratory labor. When you talk about Europe, you talk about America, you talk about Australia and Gulf, definitely India has been leading the migration, has been running most of the hotels in that part of the world. But unfortunately, since most of the people who actually work at entry-level positions, which is a large number, they do not have specific qualifications which makes them champions in that skill. For example, if a cook is going to work in Indian cuisine in Gulf, I don't know whether he's a certified cook or not, or whether does he meet the standard requirement of a quality hotel or a quality restaurant, which has always been a challenge. And we realize that 80% of the workforce which actually migrates across the globe is the entry level or the workforce which actually work at customer-centric positions, customer interaction positions. And to fulfill that gap, we have designed very strong vocational programs which are 3 levels. There is a foundation level program, there is an intermediate level program, and there is an advanced level program. So it's in and out kind of a system, and it specializes in 4 skills. One is food and beverage service, one is culinary, and third is rooms. While the 4th one is supportive, which is hospitality management skills. Now the good part is we are partnered here in India with CII, which is Confederation of Indian Industry, and with their help we are setting up currently 8 to 10 centers across the country. That's the physical centers where people can do a certificate or a diploma and then probably get international placements because of its global recognition. But what we realized that during this COVID-19, there is a huge opportunity which has come up to us. And the opportunity was to identify those people who have come back either from other countries to India, or people who have gone back from metros to the cluster states from where these people normally migrate. For example, in our industry, Uttarakhand, UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, these are the strong sources of manpower supply to the hotels in the metro, and then ultimately for international placements. Now, because of a large number of them may not have relevant qualifications or may not have relevant expertise, these people were working at semi-skilled or maybe unskilled positions and were paid much lesser salaries as compared to competitive workforce from any other country. So this has always been a traditional disadvantage that most of us faced, and we realize that this opportunity of people who have come back, they can be recertified, they can be upskilled, they can be actually reskilled for the positions, so that when the situation becomes normal, they have an opportunity to go back to different countries at a better positions and at better salaries. So with that perspective in mind, we have redesigned our foundation programs, whether it is culinary skills or food and beverage service skills or room skills, into a RPL certification. So first of all, it's not expensive for the person. He can pay it himself if he wants to. Secondly, it is completely delivered online. And thirdly, the assessment is based on the practical applications. The assessment is not based on theoretical application knowledge. It's based on how practical has he been, how much practical knowledge he has actually absorbed over the last 1 year, 2 years of his working in the industry. Now, with that, I believe what will happen is a lot of people will be able to get a formal qualification which is globally recognized, and they will be able to probably look at better job positions in future. So that's for the people who have come back and are going to be in India for some time looking for opportunity. Now, what has also happened is large number of hotels will actually be not retaining the employees in the numbers they were retaining in the past, because the industry will take its time to come back to normal. Now, even in that section, what we have done is we have started identifying partners who can actually work with us to skill these people. Now, there are a lot of people who work as, let's say, a tandooriya, who work in a dhaba on the way from Uttarakhand to Punjab, and then after he learns a little bit of skills, he comes to Delhi, hoping that he will be able to get a job in a star category hotel. But he gets stuck in smaller restaurants, works for 3 or 4 years. Because he doesn't have qualification, none of the 5-star hotels touch them. So they remain unskilled, they remain semi-skilled, I would say now, because they have learned they've got some knowledge. And when you talk to them, most of them say that, sir, we want to go to New Zealand, we want to go to Australia, we want to go, because somebody from the family is already working in those countries and is sending them dollars. So we realized that there is a huge opportunity to contextualize the Swiss program into a more Indianized program, where we can train people into specialized skills which would help them to get jobs. Because when you travel abroad, most of the Indian restaurants which are in large demand have very poor quality of food, and that is because most of the people who work in those restaurants normally do not have enough training background or do not have enough training to produce the quality of food which is required to be produced. So there's a lot of adjustment which happens. So one, it will help us to globally market our food, which is very critical, because currently our food is looked as takeaway food. We need to bring it to a next level. So maybe with the training, maybe by training and upskilling our chefs, upskilling our stewards, we will be able to provide good quality manpower to those restaurants. That's one part. Now, because of the laxity of time, I would like to come to a second issue which actually troubles me a lot, is that within the city, like if you look at the Gulf model, whenever somebody goes to work in Gulf, the hotel not only takes the responsibility of visa, but also takes the responsibility of accommodation and transportation of the employees. Now, in our country, we have this as a big lacuna. Most of the migratory labor lives in very poor quality conditions. When I say migratory, means people who come from one state to metros. Now, this could be for multiple reasons, because most of us, we like to keep our costs low and compare.
Mr. Roy, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
So quickly, I was thinking that government should take this opportunity to set up migratory hostels in these metros. And moreover, we would like to work with government if there are opportunities where we can train large number of people in short period of time, so that these people can be skilled, these people can be reskilled if required through our centers. And so we are trying to work with state governments. Already with Kerala, we have signed an MOU with Kerala government who are giving us a full-fledged center to make it a world-class center where all these people who are interested in upskilling their current situation, so they are working with us on that. So similarly, we hope there will be a lot of such governments, because Kerala has nearly, I think, 3 million people who go and work in Gulf. So that's a huge potential we are looking at. We are talking to a lot of other governments. But yes, if Ministry of External Affairs would like to participate, we are a world-class organization. We are #1 in the world in hospitality education. And we would like to work with really the best to make sure that we can benefit to these people. Thank you so much. Thank you, Surbhi, for the time given.
Thank you so much. I think we have Avneet amongst us again. So Avneet, are you there? Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me, Surbhi?
Yes, Avneet. So Avneet is the head of corporate strategy and international collaboration. Avneet, you have 10 minutes.
Sure. Thanks, and apologies. The connection is a little tricky today. Fortunately, I also have my colleague Shahbaz from NSDC. So in case Surbhi I break off, he'll be able to join in. I also have a presentation, and I will start immediately. A very good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for all the interesting insights that you've shared, and thanks particularly for the opening remarks to the Secretary. There are 2 points that I would like to talk about today. One is about the India International Skill Centers, and second is the very popular Swadesh skill card that everybody has been talking about. So we have prepared a short analysis, and I'll be happy to take you through that analysis. To begin with, a quick background of what NSDC's India International Skill Centers are. So there are around 100 organizations that run over 800 centers, which have been impaneled as of earlier this year as India International Skill Centers. Now, in this capacity, what they do is that we heard about the orientation training, which the MEA sponsors under the PKVY scheme. So they run those orientation training programs. They provide assessment and certification. They provide bridge training courses, and etc. So all efforts are concentrated towards international workforce mobility. That's what our large supplier network does. On the demand side, NSDC, through its various B2B and G2G collaborations, tries to gather the demand across various countries. So far we are in active dialogue with over a dozen countries, both at a G2G and a B2B level, and we are closely working with the MEA and MSD to increase this network of global partnerships through both channels and dialogues. In the middle, so on the one side is this demand side of the story. On the other side is the supply side of the story, and in the middle there is a sort of an aggregation platform that we have tried to conceptualize, which we will be going live with soon. So the NSDC International Platform is a tool to bridge the demand and supply gap. which is the largest concern as far as this industry is concerned. Certain markets, such as the GCC market, markets have their own, are mature corridors. They have their own dynamics that are working. There are others on a lot of the European markets that are much newer, and such linkages haven't been established. And then there are various others such as the Japan, Australia, Canada, US. So we are trying to create this network of first of all, building the existing partnerships and making them more transparent and more accessible. And second is we are also trying to increase these various international corridors to facilitate international workforce mobility. So that is what the India International Skills Center does. And like I said, that this is a vast network of more than 800 centers. So we are very fortunate that we have these building blocks ready. Now to top this, all of us are in the midst of witnessing this new phenomena that we are all trying to grapple with, particularly from a migration point of view. Through the Vande Bharat mission, which is an interministerial effort of the Government of India to bring back citizens. More than 65,000 people have already arrived back. As NSDC is working in close collaboration with the Ministry of Civil Aviation, External Affairs, and of course Ministry of Skills Development and Entrepreneurship, to collect information regarding the skill sets of these migrants who are returning back. So I'll quickly move into the presentation to show you some of the data that we have gathered through this exercise, and it throws some very interesting insights. Suvri, you've put that up, and I assume that people will be able to see it. Excellent. Okay, thank you. So as you can see, this data stands as on 8th June, where over 15,000 migrants returned and filled this card. A brief background about what Swadesh stands for is Skilled Workers Arrival Database for Employment Support. So that's what Swadesh stands for, and like I said, it is about creating this database of migrants. So over 15,000 have returned back, of which 41% have said that they are currently employed, and most of them, like 59%, have said that they are not employed, that is, they have witnessed job losses. If we look at the top 10 countries of employment and returning states, the pile on the left side, if you look at the chart, the GCC countries make up 82% of the countries from where people are returning back. So you can see UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Bahrain. These are the countries that make up the maximum percentage of the countries. In terms of the states where people are going back to, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and UP are the top 5 that make up 73%. The next slide gives us an account of the top 10 work sectors and job titles. So if you can see from the bottom, construction, oil and gas, tourism and hospitality, automotive and IT/ITES are some of the high demand sectors from where people are returning. And the kind of job titles that they have are, for instance, accountants, drivers, electricians, draftsmen, welder, etc. In terms of, so Sudhi, the next slide, please. In terms of the work experience and education qualification, now this is interesting, as we can see that most of them, like almost half of them, come with over 10 years of work experience. So they are qualified, as the chart on the right side shows. 47% of them are graduate and 17 are postgraduate. So these people who are returning back are highly qualified, they come with excellent experience, and they have the skill sets that we have seen in the previous slides. Moving on next, we've done like a quick analysis of the top 5 states and districts. So if we look at the analysis for the state of Kerala, about 5,000 workers have returned from 73 countries to Kerala. The top 5 again being the GCC countries, and the largest sector here happens to be the oil and gas sector. Construction is also large, and the top 5 job roles are accountants, drivers, draftsmen, nurses. So nurses, as again, with all the conversation and the significance of the requirement in the healthcare sector, both nationally and most significantly internationally, even as everything else remains closed, is the segment that we are looking at. I think there was. Sorry, I was just trying to look at some other data points. Maybe I can share them with you later. Moving on to the next slide, that gives you an analysis of the districts. So the top 4 districts of Kerala, and it tells us that the number of people currently unemployed are 63 out of 107. I'm looking at the first instance of construction sector in the top district of Thrissur, where 653 people have returned. And so these 4 districts essentially make up most of the returnees as far as the state of Kerala is concerned. And again, the top 5 sectors also remain the same in terms of oil and gas, construction, tourism. Next, looking at the state of Tamil Nadu, we can see that the countries are the same from where they are returning. They are all the GCC countries. In terms of the top 5 sectors, also some very similar trends can be seen. The district level analysis on the next slide shows us that Chennai, Kanyakumari, Madurai and Tiruchirappalli are the districts that have received the maximum migrants, and the sectors remain the same as we have discussed earlier. Moving on to the state of Karnataka, the pattern is again very similar, GCC countries. The top 5 sectors are also oil and gas, construction, tourism, drivers, industrial welders, draftsmen, accountants. So accounts, finance and accounts is another big area of job roles that we noticed, and in particularly in Karnataka, a lot of migrants with this skill set have returned back. District level analysis of the state of Kerala shows us that Bangalore, Dakshina Kannada, Udupi and Bangalore, urban and rural both. These are the 4 that have seen the most number of migrants coming back. And finally, if we look at the state of Maharashtra, similar trends. What also gets accounted for is United States being one of the countries from where people have returned back. Hospitality and tourism emerges as an important sector here. We can see that the food and beverage service manager is one of the top job roles. Food and beverage service steward is another job role that emerges here, and so on and so forth.
Navneet, 2 minutes.
Sure, I'm just wrapping up. Finally, we have the last slide in terms of Uttar Pradesh that shows us, again, very similar trends. There is nothing different that I think gets highlighted. So this gives us like a good idea of the countries from where people are coming, the kind of skill sets with which they are coming, and also the kind of education and experience levels from which they are coming. And that really makes me question the whole premise of trying to upskill, reskill, because it seems like those are not the areas that we need to focus on. Instead, what NSDC, along with the other ministries, what we are looking at is how placement opportunities can be facilitated for these people, both internationally and at the national level. Internationally, healthcare sector is the dominant sector. We are already speaking with a lot of countries, Quebec, Australia, and others, to give a few, Germany as well, to give examples of countries which are open to getting healthcare workers today from India as soon as things open up. National level strategy includes different strategies that we are trying to work with the various governments, with this at the national, and also with the corporates. So there's a lot of interest that has proactively, the big corporates are reaching out to us for this database, asking for very specific requirements in huge numbers. So we are very hopeful of creating opportunities for these migrants who have returned back, mostly hoping that they get absorbed at the national level, and we'll be very happy to initiate, any sort of international workforce mobility as is possible during these constrained times. So I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Avneet. I'll next move to the last speaker for the day in terms of the panelists. So our next speaker is Ms. Veena Swaroop, who has served as the Director HR for Engineers in India Limited and is also the chair for the FICCI Task Force. Ms. Swaroop, again, 10 minutes.
Now can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we are audible.
Okay, I have not unmuted. So good afternoon, everyone, and my compliments to the organizers for having organized this. I don't know whether I'm at an advantage or a disadvantage for being the last speaker, but before I proceed, it's very heartening to hear Avneet say the kind of jobs that they are offering. So many people today in our scenario where we really have a lot of job losses, so it's very, very heartening. I myself come from the oil and gas sector, having put in 30 years with ONGC before I came on the board of EIL, and I have seen really very skilled workers as technicians, as rigmen, as drillers, as well as domain specialists in EIL. But I'd like to put my conversation of, maybe I have 8 minutes left now, for in the perspective in which I am going to bring across my thoughts. I would like to say that when we talk about skilling, of course, all kinds of qualifications are skilling, but I will be restricting myself to the blue-collar workers. That's A. And secondly, when we are talking about skilling of migrants, I am going to be talking about migrants who are going from rural to urban, as well as the international migrants which are coming. Because to my thought, to my mind, I feel that once they are in their place without a job, the situation is the same whether they are from rural to urban to rural, or within India, or whether they've come from abroad. So having said that, we are all aware what scenario we are in today. Till 3 months back, we were preparing for Industry 4.0. And in that, we were preparing for turbulences because of exponential technologies. Least did we think that these kind of turbulences would come our way. But it has changed the entire landscape. We were doing skilling earlier also. NSDC has been working, and my compliments to NSDC for the entire qualification packs and the entire job roles that have been defined. It's a massive job that has been done. But with all these lockdowns and shutdowns that have happened, the movement of migrants that has happened, and job losses that have happened, and on the other hand, we talk of a new normal. And the new normal is entirely different from the earlier normal, where we are talking about social distancing, where we are talking about work from home. Now, all this is going to impact the entire landscape of work. If you could visualize a shop floor today, where you had, say, 100 workers working on a shop floor, and you'll be having only 30 of them going there, or 50 of them. I am a core HR person, so I'll give you that perspective. You visualize 30 people doing the job of 100 people. So now what's going to be the scenario? No matter how good our qualification packs may be, no matter how good our job roles will be, we need to define them once again. So it will be needing a total redefinition of all job roles. Massive multitasking will come into play, and beyond that, skilling will need this multitasking. If a vendor is working, a vendor has assistance with them. They have to learn alone on their own. So how is it that so these job roles will need to be redefined. SOPs will need to be redrafted. All SOPs will need to be redrafted. Skilling curriculums will need to be reviewed. And the skill gap study, as the Secretary also said, will need to be reviewed. And in this scenario, there are 4 points which come to my mind as action plans. Point number 1, since labor has returned to villages, as I said, I'm talking about blue-collar workers, labor has returned to villages, this is the time to be utilized to train them. It could be RPL, it could be new trade. And incidentally, on the platform of FICCI, I am a member of their skill development committee. I am presently chairing a task force on rehabilitation of migrant workers and what should be the living conditions, what should be the skilling patterns, and many other areas. And we'll be happy to share that report with you the moment it is out. So these are the areas which we have covered in that report also. The number 2 action point which I would like to bring forth is the skill gaps vis-a-vis the skill-wise numbers trained to be ascertained state-wise and district-wise. So what we are recommending is that we need to have migration support centers to be set up. Like you have embassies and you have in every country, and similarly, maybe we'll need to have this migration support center, which besides giving them career counseling, giving them support, could also give them this, and migrant workers will need to be registered somewhere on the China pattern, and the same registration should carry forward to all other states too. Point number 3 which I am making is that skilling should be as per the future plan. How will they be utilized? Because what I have observed over time is not now, but even earlier, what I have observed is that a number of areas skilling is happening, but it's not necessarily matching with the jobs that are available. So a person does the skilling in the institute which is close to their place. A person does skilling for what is easily available, but then where's the job? Number of people trained in retail and the retail job was not there. That's an example I'm giving you. So we must see how we are training them and the kind of skilling that we are doing, how is it going to fit the jobs, because they have to lead them to somewhere. And the 4th point that I'm making is that a robust database, there has to be a real-time robust database. Again, Secretary had mentioned this point too. So coming back to my point number 3 on skilling should be as per future plan. So how are we going to give them jobs? Of course, Abneet has mentioned a number of areas where jobs are available, but I could see most of them are white collar and very few blue collar. So what I suggest here is that we must encourage self-help groups. Maybe a village level, a hub could be created, say for tailoring, for apparels. So that kind of a situation, some kind of a study needs to be done district-wise, state-wise. What are the various jobs in particular states? What are they good at? And maybe that could be done. Some clusters could be developed. Then we could think of entrepreneurship, which was mentioned earlier also. There is already an ecosystem in our country. So when jobs are in scarcity, we need through the Magrega scheme and through Mudra loans and various other schemes that the government already has, we need to come out with these kind of encouragement for our blue-collared workers, the labor force which is getting back to their villages, that they start their own jobs. Another thought which was coming to our mind was that government may like to consider schemes to incentivize setting up industry in rural areas. I think the FM had also mentioned it in one of her speeches. And if we shift from urban to rural, closer to the available workforce which is available, so maybe that much of migration may not happen as was happening, and we may not witness these kind of sites again in the future. Another area which was there was the skilling in construction. That's a very important area. And it's very difficult. Again, coming from oil and gas and from EIL, I know how difficult it is to get construction workers. But if we have planned it in such a manner that we are going to set up industry here, we are going to build up roads here, we are going to do this kind of infrastructure, train them according to that. So that kind of fitting that glove is required at this point of time. And the last on this point would be that they be given some kind of digital training. Now, that's a wishful thinking, but it can discuss a number of times amongst a lot of circles that if we could encourage them by giving them digital training and some kind of a scheme where they could be given maybe smartphones, it would help them for training also and maybe earn their livelihood. So these were certain suggestive areas which I was suggesting. Then apprenticeship may be given a boost. We already have government schemes for apprenticeship, but somewhere, especially for those who are migrants and those who are coming from overseas and are the white-collared ones, maybe some kind of apprenticeship could be offered to them by large industries and companies to be able to give them hands-on experience, and somewhere a dovetailing of vocational education also. That's somewhere we don't give it so much of importance. So that could also be done. And incidentally, I'll mention here that PKE is coming out with a pilot. It's the National Knowledge Framework Hub, which is a hub and spoke model. And that is where you have a large industry and you have a large academic institution as the hubs. And you have smaller companies coming in as the spokes to be able to bring them together for industry academia interface so that people who are passing out after skilling, they are future ready, they are industry ready, and they are able to fit the bill for what they are required. So my final points over here.
2 minutes, sorry to interrupt.
Half a minute I'll take. Industry will need now, as I'll repeat it for the sake of repetition, to redesign all their jobs. reskill the talent, re-engineer its workforce, reconstruct teams. So that's very important. We need to look at it at the entire gamut, and skilling must keep pace through close coordination between industry, academia, and the skilling agency. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rup. You made some very important points. I'll now ask our discussant for the day, Professor Idudaya Rajan, to make his intervention. Sir, 5 minutes for your interventions, please.
Thanks, Surabhi, for the invitation, and also the other participant. I can see the secretary also looking at if I can give any more point today. I think I want to make basically 5 minutes, maybe 5 points. One is that I want to pick up 1 point from Avneet's presentation, because she was talking about the returned migrants came through the Vande Bharat flights. But I think that these flights are special flights. I think this is, I was telling to the Kerala government, what we have seen now is a trial for the movie. It's a teaser. So the people who have come is not real migrants. Some of them are dependents. I have seen them. We were talking with them. So we have to wait for the real migration, return migration to come in. So we are expecting at least 15 lakhs to India, not just what we are talking about, because we have to wait for more time to get the real database to allow the return migrant to re-migrate. We were telling to the Kerala government at least 1/3 of them will re-migrate. How the Skill India can help the people to re-migrate. That is the one part of the story. Second part, very important, is that not all states there is going to be a migration. I think we should look at it. The latest data from the e-migrate clearly indicate that the international migration is moving from south to north. We are getting Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, UP, what I call them demographic dividend states. They are demographic losing states. I'm sitting with a state high aging, and our people are not here. But those states, you have large number of young people are going to come. So you have to train them, what I call them new migrants. I think we should also talk about not only returned migrants, reskilling, we should also talk about what I call them new migrants also will leave, because COVID-19 is going to create opportunities beyond our imagination. I think the migration is not going to end. It is going to open up in localities where you were not even imagined. We are talking to Kerala government to send people to Africa. See, we have to talk about new avenues, new destinations, so new skills. We should imagine even new skills. The third point I would like to make is that Skill India, when our Prime Minister talks about self-reliant India, I think we should put the Skill India in the forefront, and we should talk about what is called the employment exchange for returned migrants. I was telling to the Kerala government we should have a exchange, because not many of them will come to you to register yourself. So they can create an employment exchange. I was telling them, the Kerala government, something like a Kerala matrimony. What is Kerala matrimony? Nothing. It gives you a lot of opportunities. You can look at the boys, girls, you can choose. Like that, employers should be able to look at the skills what they are looking for. So you have to connect those people. Connecting people is very important. That is what the matrimony column does. So I think we should think of a novel idea to set up an employment exchange, maybe skill exchange. I don't know. You should think of something very important on that. The fourth point is very important, is we have to promote women migration. I think something is going to open up. For example, I was looking at the data from Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, 80% of the people were going in 80s and 90s were women. Now they are trying to control, and we are getting 30 to 40% in Sri Lanka. In India, we have no database, but our data from Kerala indicates maybe 20% of them are migrating, women. And most of them we have lot of barriers for them. And I already talked to our secretary in a meeting. We have to remove the barriers for female migration. That age 30, I think where did he get the age 30, the magic age 30? I don't know. I was sitting in the POI office some 10 years back. I met many women who are not age 30. They are all manipulating the passports to get age 30. What are we doing for that? I think we have to talk about liberating them, and they will be creating large pool of care workers. They can go to Italy. They are looking for people. So I think we can think of sending care workers. We have to promote women migration. We have to talk about, India is talking about facilitating safe, orderly and legal migration. I think we have to slowly change the gear from that, third gear to fourth gear. Now we should go to fifth gear. What is the fifth gear? we have to start talking about promoting. I think we are underguiding that. We have skill centers, we have Skill India, we have demographic dividend. If the COVID can move to all the countries, why can't our Indians can move every country? COVID is everywhere. We should see Indians everywhere. Everywhere. For that, we should create, promote, not facilitate, promote the, what is called promote safe, orderly, legal migration. We have to promote. We are not doing that. We do sometime underground. I know many states want to send people, but we have to open it up. Open policy. We talk about open economy. We are talking about liberalization. We are talking about private investment. We should talk about sending our people what is called no barriers for them. If women want to go to Gulf in the age of 21, we should send them. We should tell them, you go, I will protect you there. Don't protect here. You tell them you can go, I will come and protect you. We have embassy. We have, we should talk some type of positive thinking, because COVID has given great opportunities. This is going to be a new beginning for migrants. New beginning, and you have to explore. You have to explore. It's like we talk to our students. Google means what? Research, research. I think we should re-look at our migration policies, immigration bill, return migration, and also many people tell me in Kerala, return migrants are coming only from the Gulf. No, they are coming from everywhere, not just from the Gulf. Today, according to my estimate, we have 20 million Indians still holding Indian passport, working anywhere in the world. 20 million people still holding Indian passport. I'm not talking about Indo-American, I'm not talking about Indo other countries. Out of that, 10 millions are in the Gulf. At least 15 lakhs will come from the Gulf, and another 15 lakhs will come from other countries. So you will see return migration everywhere. And many of them will many of them will remigrate. Even some of us, we are talking, we also remigrate after some time. So I think remigration is part of the life, and we should promote that. And Skill India should be the best opportunity which our Prime Minister is promoting. We have new department, new ministry, and it has to take forward so that, like COVID, we should spread our Indian migration everywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now open the floor for views from other participants who have joined us for the discussions. I know that some state governments have some points to make, so I'll invite RSLDC for their brief intervention. Mr. Jain, are you there? Mr. Jain, can you hear me? I think we'll wait for them. Meanwhile, we have some questions in the group chat which have come for the participants. I'll just read them out. So some questions are, why not ITI? We are going to be one step ahead, overlapping the existing ITI centers along with skill centers. We can expect an immediate boost in upgrading the syllabus with more practical activities and qualified tutors. People have asked for state-specific numbers for the people who have registered for the Swadesh Skill Card. And there is one more intervention regarding multi-skilling for returnees from Gulf to overcome the crisis arising due to ongoing pandemic, to cut the cost and to control manpower gathering. We have intervention from Shabri Nair from ILO, who speaks about the linkage between international migration returnees and internal migration. Skilling should therefore be an important part of the broader reintegration strategy. And the point that Professor Rajan mentioned about Sri Lanka, of bringing to fore the regional element, that a number of countries are competing for the same labor markets and are also diversifying their labor markets. It requires the need for a conversation at the regional level to look at skilled migration and also to better protect migrants, especially the working conditions for blue-collar workers. Apart from that, we have PGE and various POEs who have joined us from the various parts of the country. If any of the POEs to make any intervention, most welcome.
Should I connect them?
Mr. Jain, are you here?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I'd like to take some measures which are taken by Rajasthan government. First, I would like to tell you, sir, because our department is governed by Labour Secretary, so we are catering demands of labours, employment, ITIs. So recently we have created a portal that is called .Koshal, where data of 53 lakh people is available. All ITI graduates who have done their ITI from any of the districts, the data of migrant labor, 13 lakh people from migrant labor, and RSLDC 10 people. That way we are having a database of 53 lakh people available on this Koshal portal that has recently been launched, and we are also having a demand of 11 lakh people, 11 lakh positions are there posted by different industrial groups. So that way there will be demand and supply gap arrangement sort of thing will be there. Second thing we are doing is we are contacting with different type of associations. Might be Gems and Jewelry Association, might be Apparel Sector Association. We are having an agreement with those people, and we will be training people on RTD model. That is recruitment, train and deploy model. That is recruitment, train and deploy method. That way everybody will be getting a job. What we'll be doing is we'll be having a group of people. First, they will be selected by the companies, they will be recruited, they will be offered a formal appointment letter, they will be trained, and after that they will be deployed. There will be 100% placement of the people under RTD model. That we are trying on pilot basis. We are taking up this issue with Gems and Jewelry.
Mr. Jain, are you there? I think we lost Mr. Jain there. If any of the POEs would like to make any points, I know POE Chandigarh, POE Bareilly, POE Delhi, POE...
Third point, the EDP days. इसमें कनेक्ट नहीं होगा कोई भी अपना ये
I think meanwhile we'll take views from the others. If anybody else wants to share their views. I would request our PG, Shri Amrit Lagoon, if he has any interventions to make. Sir, you have any interventions to make? Hello? Sir, can you hear me? Hello? Okay, in that Sir, the microphones are not muted. Can you see it?
डिस्कनेक्ट हो गया डिस्कनेक्टेड है
Okay. In the meanwhile, what we'll do is we'll read out the further questions. So we have one major question from SAFCO Skill India. Being a major stakeholder in overseas migration, we request MEA to support our presence with aggressive rebranding of our services, like renaming our RA to International Placement and Skill Promoters of India, a logo and basically a means to create awareness of a legal gateway for Indian job aspirants overseas. So I'll just go around the panel and request them to share their views on each of the questions and interventions which were made. You could all take 1 minute each. In the meanwhile, we'll get others and their microphones issues sorted. So we'll go in the same order. Gabriel, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Yes, go ahead.
Just really, for me, talking about migration at this stage is really, for me, it's not really a positive point. Meaning, how do you make sure, like everything, all country of origins have issues of returning migrant workers. So once things normalize, then everything will again apply for that same pause. So what I'm trying to drive at, in the case of those, I fully agree that it should be 1/3 of these returning migrants should have job opportunities abroad. But my point now is that they should have the formal qualifications, because most of the findings in South Asia are really that even if I have a higher competency, but I cannot show formal certificate that I am saying, the rate that I get much lower compared to those workers who with the same qualification. Take the examples of the workers coming from Southeast Asia. Look at that qualification that's much better than workers coming from South Asia. And this is on the blue collar jobs. That's the one area. It has to be the returning migrant workers, for us, the government, should have to have a strategy that they back them to the level, like what South Asia have to process the returning migrants. Agrarian or agriculture opportunities. These are basically, do not aim for, again, going outside the country. Stay in the rural area, develop the agrarian, the cultivation, the agriculture, this kind of scenario. So you should look at these two levels here. First is for India to really have a higher level of qualifications for their workers, meaning I strongly insist that they should have a formal qualification so that they can really compete with other returning migrant workers from other countries of origins. On the other hand, say 2/3 of those returning migrants, bring them to the provinces, look at the agriculture, look at the agritourism and this kind of occupations. That has been, they say, is the emerging post-pandemic. Over.
Okay, Avdeep, you want to go next?
Sure. So very quickly, thanks, Surbi. Some very interesting points have been made by everybody. Particularly, Professor Rajan, your points have been well noted, and we'll definitely get in touch with you separately to discuss some of these issues. I'll not get into the data conversations right now, but we've noted what you've said, and we have clarity in terms of how the whole data part is being processed, plus the strategy, which is even more significant. Data is the starting point. Another point that I remember being mentioned was around RAs being branded, etc. So as the India International Skills Centers, very soon, if that particular RA is part of our network, they will be receiving special logo and a certificate and funding guidelines that we are going to be issuing very soon. So it is good to know that these things matter. And I think it's the right time to make sure that all these initiatives are put together. Thank you.
Mr. Roy, you're up next.
I just have one important point to make, that I understand migration is a necessary evil, and we have to make sure that it continues to happen at a pace which is good for the country. While at the same time, my recommendation is that we need to improve the quality of skilling so that this workforce becomes more acceptable worldwide, because what we lack is the quality of the skills in the manpower. And that we see when we I'm not talking about IT and technology industry, I'm talking about service industry, where they need to become world class, and so that their take home or their salaries improve, they get better positions, and their demand across the various parts of the globe, not just Gulf and Australia or Americas, but all over the world. So I think that there's a huge opportunity to retrain them and make sure that they become competitive from global perspectives. That's it. Thank you so much.
Ms. Swaroop?
Yeah, so I have 2 points to make in this area, and I would feel that we need to be very practical about what is the present. Can you hear me? So
yeah.
Scenario. So there are 2 points. One is, there was the study done by NASCOM and EY 2 years back on future of jobs, which said what are the forces which are driving the Indian economy. And they highlighted globalization, demographic dividends, and exponential technology. Today things are different. Today all countries are looking within. So where is the globalization is not going to be there for some time to come. So in this present scenario, we need to find solutions within our own country for immediate absorption of these people and for their livelihood, rather than thinking of how we can send them out. No one's going to accept them for some time. Another example I'd like to share with you, coming from oil and gas, we have had our boys positioned in places in all Gulf countries, and they have been acknowledged as the best workers on oil platforms, etc. And the moment this pandemic broke out, these very companies, I'm sure you people from MEA would know about it, our companies in India were forced to bring their people back. So they were saying you take them overnight. And these boys have gone through so much of trauma when they're coming back. I don't think they will want to go back to these countries immediately. So easier said than done. I think we need to be very practical and find solutions for migrants within our own country for the near future. Maybe a couple of years down the line, scenarios may change, but in the near future, I don't see it happening.
Okay.
Myself.
Imagine if you have any points to make.
Yeah, only 1 point to make. I think we should also recognize the contribution of migrants. I think that is missed in the whole COVID crisis, because though they sent $80 billion last year, only the Kerala CM were discussing with the PM to bring back migrant. I was telling them, where are those other CMs? They never talk about my international migrants. And when I talk to some other governments, why they are not talking, they said we have no data. Because Kerala data is given by the migration survey we have. So I think MEA should initiate what is called the India Migration Survey 2021. So that you have some data, because other governments saying no data, so we have not talked to them. Every time CM, PM talk was on migration. I think we should recognize their contribution so that we talk about them, not just to only give them lip service, which we should not do.
Okay, we will quickly take one more round of questions if anybody has any interventions to make. I'll just read out one of the questions that we've got. There have been cases where people with the most relevant skills don't get proportionate wages in the first place. So how do we ensure that this conversation happens hand in hand? It is along the lines of the point that were mentioned by the Secretary. And also construction is affected, and one question is directed to Ms. Swaroop, that construction is affected, but maintenance of oil and gas sector cannot stop until one plant is producing, and Indians are on top priority. So those are the 2 questions. Meanwhile, if any of the recruiters who have joined us today for the meeting, both private and government, have any points to make, we'll be most glad to listen to your views.
Can I come in here? About the point of oil.
We'll just see that if there's no other questions, we'll take your interventions and then we'll draw towards the close. So if nobody else has if anybody has a intervention or a question towards the panelist, we are asking everyone to give their views. Do we have any interventions? I don't see any more questions in our group chat box. So I think I'll give the floor to you, Ms. Swaroop. Yeah.
So about keeping the continuity of the oil and gas sector, I would like to say that in this time of pandemic also there has been a lot of activities, and you must have read it in the papers also, whereas offshore we have the 14 days on-off pattern in ONGC, but this time they have stayed offshore for over 60 days, and there were a number of that entire crew also. So continuity has been there. We have a lot of people who are very loyal to the nation, and work has not stopped. It would definitely continue. But I think somewhere we are mixing up between migrants. When I was talking about people who were placed in the Gulf countries, and they would have managed with their smaller minority of their workforce, but wanted the Indians to come back. So there was a mix-up there, please. Thank you.
Okay. I'll check one last time with our PG. Sir, can you hear us? Are you able to come on board? Is your microphone working? Hello? Not. I think there's some issue with the mics. So I don't see any more questions. So IA1 and CEO of ICM, Shri Yogeshwar Sangwan, to make his concluding remarks.
Thank you, Surabhi. So I would like to thank Secretary, all our panelists and participants, and colleagues from the Ministry and ICM for taking part in today's webinar. We got very useful inputs, comments and suggestions which will help in formulation of policy which we can pass on to various stakeholders. We in the YA1 division are working on imparting soft skills, as Secretary had mentioned, called pre-departure orientation training to migrant workers who go abroad to ECR countries. We also work with NSDC under the Pravasi Kaushal Vikas Yojana, which is still being developed by NSDC. NSDC is already making the database called Swadesh, which Ms. Kaur explained in detail. We also have partnership agreements. We have one with France, and we are negotiating with Germany, Benelux, and Portugal, and with some other countries also, which will open up new corridors for migration. Mr. Bordado mentioned about the Global Coalition Report on the Future of Work and on the need for reskilling and upskilling and giving the rural economy a priority. And Mr. Roy mentioned about his organization and their tie-up with CII in various sectors of the hospitality industry and various centers in India. Ms. Kaur mentioned about the India International Skill Centers for imparting skilling training and their NSDC platform with the Gulf and the matching of demand and supply, and then she explained about the Swadesh platform for registering the people who are coming back on the Vande Bharat flights. And she, as Secretary had mentioned, she again confirmed that it is the construction, oil and gas, and tourism and hospitality sectors which account for the maximum number of people who have registered on Swadesh. NSDC is already working with various countries like Canada, Germany, and Australia in healthcare sector where there is a demand, and they have already established link with the corporate sector for specific requirements, and there is a big need. Then Ms. Swaroop focused on the blue-collar workers and mentioned about the need for migrant support centers, just like we have our missions abroad, and about a database, and also about self-help groups and entrepreneurship. Professor Rajan mentioned about the huge numbers which are expected to come back from abroad, and about the Skill India program and the shifting of migration from south to north. he also mentioned about women's migration who can work as care workers. So I thank all of you once again for your valuable suggestions and contributions, and we will see how we can dovetail the suggestions in policy formulation among various stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. With this, we come to an end of this meeting. We are learning each time how to improve the experience with the web platform, and we hope that we learn as we do more and more webinars. Thank you, everyone who joined us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now it gets, now it is okay. Now Amidst can speak. I can see you now. You can speak now. Looks like.
Yeah, it was when I looked now. We clicked now it opened, but before it was.
Yeah, it was, now it is working. Yeah, good. Maybe next time.
Maybe
Thank you.
She will be touched. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.